Carnegie Hall shimmered like a cathedral made for sound. Its chandeliers rained soft gold over deep crimson seats, where men in tuxedos and women in sequined gowns sat poised with polished anticipation. 1,000 whispered conversations hummed. Beneath the surface, rising and falling like the breath of a sleeping beast. Tonight was the Virtuoso's Gala, not just a concert, but a coronation. The most prestigious showcase in classical music, where prodigies were unveiled and legends made. Every seat had been sold out for months. Donors filled the first 10 rows. Talent scouts filled the next 20. Cameras hovered quietly, lenses blinking, feeding a global live stream watched by critics, musicians, and millions of fans across the world. Backstage, the air was electric with anxiety. Teenage violinists paced in silence. Cellists stretched their fingers like athletes before a match, and harpists adjusted strings with trembling precision. Parents murmured final advice. Coaches corrected posture one last time. Every movement screamed preparation. Every breath was performance, and then, in the farthest corner backstage sat Lina Moretti, 19, quiet, alone. Her dress wasn't satin or designer or even new. It was a faded navy hand-me-down with a stitched hem and a stubborn stain at the sleeve. Her shoes, one size too small, pinched her toes, but she had grown used to that ache. In her lap rested a violin that looked like it had survived a war. The wood was pale and worn, the finish faded to a ghost of what it once was. A thin crack snaked beneath the bridge, a scar from a fall 2 winters ago that Lina couldn't afford to repair. One of the girls nearby, all pearls and silk, raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. Is that vintage or just sad? A tall boy in a tailored waistcoat smirked, his voice low but clear enough for the cameras to catch. Is this the Juilliard Gala or a community garage sale? Lina said nothing. She simply adjusted her grip on the neck of the violin. Her thumb bore a small callus. Her bow had been retightened so many times the screw was rusted halfway in. She was listed as the final performer, slot 23, just before the intermission wine was served. Her name wasn't followed by the name of a conservatory. It was followed by 4 words the audience would not miss. South Bronx Youth Program. Maestro Stefan Dahl, chairman of the gala and a conductor with a resume longer than the score of Mahler's Fifth, scowled as he flipped through the program backstage. Moretti? He muttered. Scholarship filler. Probably some board member's charity case. And yet, just beyond the velvet curtain, the girl with the cracked violin was about to walk into the brightest light of her life and play a note the world would never forget. The red velvet curtain loomed before her like the final breath of a storm. Lina Moretti stood behind it, her heart steady but her hands cold. She could hear the muffled voice of the host on stage, his accent crisp with European polish. And now, to conclude our first act, a very special participant, representing the South Bronx Youth Program, Miss Lina Moretti. The words dropped like stones into a still lake. The South Bronx part wasn't necessary, but he said it anyway, slowly, deliberately. The applause that followed was thin, polite, dutiful. Lina stepped forward. Her violin case still had a crack near the handle, taped over with the edge of an old Metro card. As she moved, a spotlight tracked her like a hunter, bright and unforgiving. The stage was too clean, too grand. Each footstep echoed. Each breath bounced off the lacquered walls. Carnegie Hall had seen Jascha Heifetz, Itzhak Perlman, Midori. Now it saw a girl in a faded dress, gripping a cracked violin. She reached center stage, blinking into the white heat of the light. The audience, rows upon rows of elegance and diamonds, leaned back in their chairs. In row B, Clarice Duval crossed her legs in choreographed annoyance, her manicured nails tapping the playbill. Well, she murmured to her seatmate, her voice caught by a nearby mic. I suppose every charity needs its poster girl. Lina heard it. She always heard it. Not just here, everywhere. Growing up, her violin had always been a burden, a luxury item in a house that often couldn't afford bread. She remembered the time she traded her Metro card for new strings. The night she played a wedding in the high rain just to cover electricity. The landlord snort when he saw her case. Nice. Shame you can't pay rent with Bach. Now all those voices rose again, not from memory but from the walls of Carnegie itself. The cameras panned across. The crowd. A sea of perfect skin, perfect teeth, perfect disdain. Someone in the third row stifled a laugh. Another, a journalist for a highbrow music review site, lifted her phone and tweeted mid-performance announcement. Bronx girl on deck. Betting 10-1 she plays Twinkle. Backstage, Maestro Stefan. Dale stood with arms crossed, his silver cufflinks flashing under the hallway light. He didn't sit, didn't watch. This is an insult to the institution, he told a producer beside him. We curate excellence, not pity. A stagehand whispered nervously. She requested to play unaccompanied. Dahl scoffed. Of course she did. Can't risk a pianist outperforming her. But Lina didn't care, because she wasn't here to be understood. She was here to be heard. She opened her violin case slowly. Inside, tucked next to a cleaning cloth and a broken shoulder rest, was a folded photograph. Her mother, hands on Lina's shoulders, in front of their tenement building, proud, tired, and unbreakable. The photo remained in the case like a talisman. Like an audience that mattered, she tightened her bow. The horsehair frayed at the tip. One string buzzed faintly, a frayed E that had snapped and been retied so many times it looked like a scar. The hall grew still. The kind of stillness not out of respect, but expectation of failure. Lina lifted the violin to her chin. It groaned softly against her collarbone, a sound only she could hear, like it too was nervous. Or maybe ready. She drew a single breath. Long, steady, then the bow touched the string and Carnegie Hall braced itself. Not for a masterpiece, but for a mistake. They were about to get neither. They were about to get a miracle. The bow touched the string, a murmur of wood, a tremble of tone, not bold, not perfect. It was fragile, honest, and human. Lina Moretti played the first note, like someone lighting a match in the rain. The sound wasn't pristine. It wavered, just slightly, like an old breath remembered after years of silence. But there was something unmistakable in it. Something raw. A quiver at the edge of control. The crowd did not gasp. They didn't need to. They felt it. She moved into the first phrase of Sarabande from Bach's Partita No. 2, a piece reserved for the daring and the vulnerable. The notes fell not like polished pearls, but like ash from an old fire. Grief wrapped in sound. The cracked violin hummed like it had a secret to tell, one not of victory, but of survival. The judges stopped writing. A few rows back, a music blogger leaned forward. Her fingers paused mid-tweet. Her screen still displayed the half-written mockery. Urban girl, cracked violin. This'll be... She never finished the sentence. Lina's fingers danced across the fingerboard, not with practiced flair, but with something older. Something lived. Each shift carried weight. Each slide remembered rent unpaid, medicine skipped, a father's absence never explained. Her right hand, the bow hand, trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from emotion that had nowhere else to go. And then it happened. The E string slipped. Not fully broken, just enough. It buzzed horribly, a metallic whimper beneath her melody. A whisper of embarrassment stirred through the crowd. Someone in the upper box laughed. Lina stopped playing. Her bow hovered mid-air. For a moment, time paused. The still point before humiliation, before collapse. But she did not step away. She did not apologize. She turned toward the audience, met their eyes, and spoke softly into the microphone. This violin has cracked 3 times. Once during a flood. Once when I dropped it on the subway. Once when my mother died and I couldn't touch it for months. The hall was silent. It's never sounded the same after, but neither have I. Then she raised the violin again and kept playing. The broken E string now trembled beneath the notes like a second voice, frail, broken, and brilliant. The sarabande continued, reshaped by imperfection. It no longer sounded like Bach. It sounded like Lina, and it was devastating. Tears slipped silently down faces, not just in the crowd but backstage. A young flutist clutched her instrument to her chest and sobbed without knowing why. One of the producers covered his mouth, whispering, "She's not performing. She's remembering." In the first, Maestro Stefan Dahl sat motionless. Then something in him cracked. He had heard perfection his entire life, dazzling, sterile precision. But what Lina played wasn't perfect, it was real. The final phrase came, slower than written, stretched, like breath through scar tissue. Her fingers softened, the bow floated, and then release. No dramatic gesture, no lingering vibrato, just silence. Not the silence of an ending, but the silence of a world holding its breath, afraid to exhale, in case it might shatter what it just felt. Lina lowered her instrument, not with triumph, with reverence. She bowed once, a deep, respectful motion, then turned away. But before she could reach the wings, she heard something behind her. Not a cough, not a murmur, not applause, just one single word whispered from the shadows. Again. She stopped and smiled. Not for them, for herself, for her mother, for the violin. The battle was over, but the war she never asked for was now won. The silence that followed Lina Moretti's final note was not the polite kind. It was sacred, heavy, alive, like the final breath before tears. She turned, walking quietly toward the wings, head lowered, unsure if what she had offered was too raw, too broken. Maybe it had been too much. Then, a sound. Clap, just one. It came from the back of the hall. Row Z, an old man in a janitor's uniform, mop still in hand, stood tall with tears in his eyes and clapped once more. Then again. People turned. Some scoffed, but then someone else joined him. A young violinist from Juilliard Prep, still holding her program, eyes red and glassy. Then another, and another. A wave began. A standing ovation, not from obligation, but from awe. The room rose like a tide, row by row. Velvet heels, polished. Shoes, trembling hands. Clarice Duval dropped her phone in her lap, her fingers too shaky to continue recording. She had come to laugh. She now stood like a child hearing music for the first time. The judges stood as one. Not in judgment. In reverence, Maestro Stefan Dahl remained seated at first, eyes fixed forward, unmoving. Then his hands dropped from the armrests, trembling. Slightly. He rose slowly, with difficulty, as if something inside him resisted. But finally he stood, spine straight, hands clasped behind his back. His eyes glistened. When he spoke, the mic picked it up. That was not a performance. That was a confession. The camera zoomed in as he stepped onto the stage. Lina, mid-exit, froze. He approached her slowly, like a man approaching a relic, a mystery, a truth. He took her hand, old palm to young calluses, and bowed his head. "Forgive us," he said. "Voice hoarse. We almost missed it. We almost missed you." Behind him, the host struggled to compose himself. "Ladies and gentlemen, history has been made, not just because of a name or a technique or a perfectly tuned string, but because something real walked into this room and shattered everything we thought we knew about greatness." The live stream exploded. "Who is she?" "I can't." "Stop crying. She just rewrote the rules." Music influencers posted fragments of her broken sarabande. Critics who had planned their witty takedowns rewrote entire columns overnight. This was not a girl with a violin. This was a soul breaking through wood and string. The Times backstage offers began pouring in before she even left the hall. A Berlin Philharmonic conductor, a Tokyo soloist contract, even an invitation to teach at the very conservatory that once denied her application, citing insufficient pedigree. She refused them all. When asked why by a reporter with a trembling voice, she said simply, "I didn't play to prove anything. I played to remember who I was, and to let someone else feel less alone. By dawn, her name had trended in over 40 countries. Broken Violin Miracle. Lina, The Truth. Moretti Sarabande. But Lina didn't stay for the press. She returned to the side alley exit where the janitor was still sweeping with quiet purpose. She nodded to him. He nodded back. No words exchanged. They understood each other. In that moment, Lina Moretti was no longer the girl from the Bronx with a cracked violin. She was the one who taught the gods of Carnegie Hall how to listen. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the Moretti apartment. In the South Bronx, the one with the cracked mail slot and the squeaky third-floor landing. It was cream-colored, thick, sealed with an embossed gold crest. Carnegie Hall Foundation Board. Inside was a scholarship offer. Full tuition, full housing, any conservatory, anywhere in the world. An invitation to return next year as headliner, a solo concert. Her name in lights. Lina read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it beside the violin case on her nightstand. She didn't pack. Instead, the next morning, she caught the 6th train to 138th Street and walked to the back lot of an abandoned community center. A building no one had entered in years, its windows shuttered, its walls tagged with forgotten names. She unlocked the side door. The key had been given to her by Mr. Alvarez, the janitor from Carnegie, who had once played trumpet in Havana before his life was swept away by storms of history. "If you're going to teach," he had said, "you'll need a place that's forgotten. That way, it's free." Inside, she swept for hours, dusted every chair, restrung an old upright piano, found cracked tambourines beneath benches and duct-taped them whole. There was no heating, no stage, but there was light, and space, and silence. She hung a hand-painted sign at the front door. The Echo Room, music for those who weren't meant to be heard. Children began coming within a week, some with instruments, most with none. Some spoke English. Others didn't speak at all. Lina welcomed them one by one, not as a star. As a mirror, she never spoke of Carnegie, never boasted. But one day, a girl with shy fingers asked, "Is it true you made all of them cry with a broken violin?" Lina smiled, adjusted the child's bow hold and said, "I didn't make them cry, the truth did." She played only once a week. Friday afternoons, when the room was golden with low light and the children too tired to pretend. Sometimes she played the sarabande. Other times she made up melodies on the spot. Melodies that didn't need names. The mime. Violin remained the same, cracked, buzzing on the E. She never repaired it. "If I fix it," she once told a journalist, "it might forget how to speak broken." They asked her if she missed the stage. She said, "This is the stage, and they're listening." On the 1-year anniversary of her performance, Carnegie Hall offered again. A solo recital, national coverage, a feature in the New Yorker. She declined. But sent them something else in return. A short video, black and white. Children in the Echo Room, laughing, tuning, bowing. At the center, Lina, eyes closed, violin at her chin. The caption read, "We are still playing." And they were. Because sometimes the greatest sound is not what comes from the instrument, but from the silence it leaves behind.